Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you had a really great day trading today. So today was Tuesday, November 19th, and what a wild start to the day. If you were watching in pre-market, there was some conflict with Russia and Ukraine, and at the very beginning of the day, even before markets opened, SPY in pre-market was down here around 582. So when we opened, we actually opened back up above the 1 hour 200 moving average. Now look at the setup that we had going into open. We had that 1 hour 200 moving average, which is where we opened. We had the 35 EMA above the 30-minute 200 moving average. That is still bullish. And right here we had the green signal line. So we did open down and we bounced right here. And on the 1 hour 200 moving average, we took it all the way from the bottom of the implied move. And if you had your orders in before the market opened, 584, 583 bull put spreads would have filled right at open, and they would have closed up 100% on that bounce. Even if you took it out one strike, 583, 582 probably had a decent premium, and that would have closed up 100%. So we bounced on the 1 hour 200 moving average. We got back above the 30-minute 200 moving average, above the 35 EMA, and took it all the way to the top of the implied move. Now the top of the implied move is right here. We didn't quite make it to the top of the implied move, but we did make it into this battle zone. This is a combination of this up gap from election week and this down gap from last week, and we got all the way up into the battle zone, but we did not get into the bull gap. So you could see that was exactly where we got pushed back down and brought back down to the 35 EMA. So really a wild day. SPX, same thing over here. We did open with a gap down, bounced on the 1 hour 200 moving average. You could see the setup here was still bullish, that 35 EMA and the 30-minute 200 moving average, with the 35 EMA above that, and then right here we had a green signal line. So we did go in with favorable technicals to bounce on the 1 hour 200 moving average. So if you were watching down here, you would have caught that support. And we took it all the way above the 30-minute 200 moving average to the 35 EMA and pushed almost to the top of the implied move, which was 59.30. So if you did have order in here for 58.60, 58.50 bull put spreads, they would have filled at open and they would have closed up 100%. I did have that order in. It was a very small order, but that did fill right away. And today was about the easiest trading day I can remember in a while, when we came right back up and took it all the way back up into this battle zone right here. So that again is this up gap and this down gap, and we only got into this part, not where they overlap. So SPY today closed up 0.37%. SPX closed up 0.4%, VIX up 4.95%. So market up, VIX up, and we did stay completely within the implied move, a little bit out here at the very beginning of the day, but we came right back up after bouncing on that 1 hour 200 moving average. All right, so QQQ, what happened over here today? We did open with a gap down to the 1 hour 200 moving average. And then we did bounce back up. We closed this gap and we took it up to the 35 EMA right here and the 30-minute 200 moving average. Now, if you look really closely, this 35 EMA still closed underneath the 30-minute 200 moving average. I have to say it, that is bearish. It did not cross back up. And even though the price did get above that, this is a bearish close. So we bounced on that 1 hour 200 moving average, then we came back up and filled this morning gap, got to this moving average resistance level, got above that pretty easily, and took it all the way to the top of the implied move. And that also took us into the island top gap, which is this up gap, this down gap, and we just got into the bottom of that just a little bit there. but stayed within the implied move. So we did get a nice relief bounce today. We did see that green signal line down here, but we also did see a bearish close. So we don't have a fully bullish setup until this 35 EMA crosses back up above. And for the relief bounce, we did hit overbought here. So QQQ up 0.69%, VXN up 1.11, so market up, volatility up, and we did trade completely within the implied move today. So at the very early start of the day, you probably could have gotten some decent premium if you sold 496, 495. We didn't quite reach that, but early in the day, there was probably still some premium there. And then at the top of the day, if you had orders for 505, 506 bear call spreads, then you could have played both sides, and that would have been a win as well when we pulled back in to close within the implied move. All right, so IWM, we opened with a gap down all the way to the bottom of the implied move, and we bounced on that 1 hour 200 moving average. So from the day before, we had a green signal line, and if you were watching on that drop, we stayed above that the entire time. So that was our support right here. And after we found support down here, we did take it all the way up to overbought. So after bouncing on that 1 hour 200 moving average, with the help of this election gap, which we have been chipping into, we did see a little bit more support in that gap. We bounced on that 1 hour 200 moving average and took it to retest the 30-minute 200 moving average. We did get a blue candle right above there, so we did manage to close above this level, and we'll see if we can get a follow through tomorrow. This 35 EMA almost made it to be bearish. I'm not going to say it crossed down. It's sitting right on top of the 30-minute 200 moving average. This is a make it or break it level. If this 35 EMA crosses underneath, then we will have become bearish in IWM. And if I take price out for just a second, it just becomes a little bit more clear. And we took that 35 EMA all the way down to the 30-minute 200 moving average. Very slight cross down, but that is the making of a really nice pullback. So we don't have to go bearish here, but if we do slide underneath and maybe see some weakness, then we will know to look lower. So let's get price back in here, and IWM did close up 0.74%. RVX closed up 5.15%. And we did stay completely within the implied move today. And lastly, DIA. DIA was our biggest loser today, the only one in the red. And we did open with a big gap down all the way down to the 1 hour 200 moving average. So across the board, the 1 hour 200 moving average is what caught us. So we got pretty deep into this election gap right here. And you could see we did have that down gap right here, and then the election gap came up over it, and that is where we bounced right above that bear gap. So 1 hour 200 moving average was right there. We got back above the 30-minute 200 moving average right here, and we almost closed the gap. We didn't close the gap completely though, and that 35 EMA was right there to smack us back down. So we closed right between the 30-minute 200 moving average and the 35 EMA. So still bearish. We did have a green signal line here, but it did look pretty weak. But it did also play out. The green signal line was right here. We opened today, still green, and we did see that push up. So even though we closed red, we did have a really nice bounce in the Dow. DIA closed down 0.31%, and we did trade completely within the implied move here. All right, so that was a recap of today, and tomorrow we have Nvidia earnings. And of course we know that Nvidia pretty much rules the world at this point. So that's going to be a really big deal. And that is why volatility is up across the board. So we have VIX up 5% today, VXN up 1%, RVX, small caps up 5%. So expect some volatility tomorrow. And in the second half of the video, I am going to have the expected move for earnings. So if you're going to be playing Nvidia earnings, you're going to want to watch till the very end. All right, guys, let's go check out tomorrow's levels. Alright guys, so before we head into tomorrow's trading ranges, if you find these videos useful, if they help you to choose better strikes and take better trades, and you love how I break it down every night, then please make sure to give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Leave me a comment below if you have any questions, and if you want to help support my channel, don't forget about that thank you button. Alright, so tomorrow's implied move is between 585 to 595, and that is from options. The 30-day average volatility and the implied move on Thursday's contract line up at 583 to 597. And to the upside, we have this island top gap that is a reversal pattern. And today, when we did see that rebound off the 1 hour 200 moving average, we did get into this gap a little bit, but right where they started to overlap is where we saw resistance, and we got pulled back down to the 35 EMA. So I call these battle zones for a reason, because usually when the gaps overlap, we do end up filling them. And just remember, we have another one underneath our trading range. And so if we get above that, the top of the gap right here is 592.60. So I'm going to say 593. And actually, let's just do a read right here. This is where we got rejected today. So 591 is the first resistance. 593 is the second, and then the top of this gap, this is where I would expect to see selling above this bull gap, but then we have this bear gap above it. So that would be between 592.60 to just a little bit above 593 is where I would expect to see selling pressure. And then top of the implied move is 595. And 597 is the top of the implied move on Thursday's contract. So if you're bullish on Nvidia and you think that earnings are going to come in good, and if you're trading SPY, then 597 might be your strike. That is very close to all-time highs. And if Nvidia earnings are really good, good guidance, everything checks out, then we may make a run for all-time highs. So I'd keep an eye on that 597 strike if you are bullish. I'm not going to lie, I am not bullish here. So I am looking to the downside. We have the 35 EMA, and we did get above that today. And then we also saw a little bounce on that level towards the end of the day. So that definitely needs to be the first level you look for. Underneath that, 30-minute 200 moving average. And then the bottom of the implied move for tomorrow is 585. And that lines right up with the 1 hour 200 moving average. That is where we've seen support. This is last Thursday, Friday. No, sorry, this is Friday. And then into Monday, we saw that bounce right here. And then today, we saw a bounce on the 1 hour 200 moving average. So right now, the 1 hour is support. And I would expect that to be max pain for tomorrow. So if we get to 585, then I would be looking to sell some bull put spreads on the day. 583 is the bottom of the implied move on Thursday's contract. So if you're bearish on Nvidia and you're looking for strikes in SPY to play for earnings, then 583 might be your strike. So maybe you're looking to do a strangle for earnings. Those strikes might be something you look to. So then SPX, very similar over here to the upside. We do have this gap. Let's actually start with giving the range. The implied move for tomorrow, 58.65 to 59.70, and then on Thursday's contract lines right up with the 30-day average volatility, and that's 58.50 to 59.85. And then to the upside, we have this island top gap. This is the battle zone, I always refer it to as. We did make it into this red part of the gap, and we got pulled back from the bull gap. So we dropped back down to the 35 EMA. So that's going to be our first level of resistance right here. Top of that gap, 59.46. So I'm going to round that up to 59.50. And then top of the implied move, 59.70. And then top of the implied move on Thursday's contract, 59.85. And then 35 EMA underneath us, 30-minute 200 moving average, and then the 1 hour 200 moving average, which is where we did bounce. And I am bearish, but this is a completely bullish setup. So 35 EMA with the price above it, trading above the 30-minute 200 moving average in a green signal line. So we are heading into tomorrow bullish in the technicals. That does not mean that we can't pull back down. But from a technical standpoint, we did move into bullish territory. And then underneath all of that, we have the election gap. So this election gap right here from after last Tuesday, but we also have this bear gap right here. And these are battle zones. These always fill when they're overlapped like this. I don't think that there's been one set of overlapping gaps that didn't fill. I don't have any on this chart. As far back as I've been tracking, they always fill. So this is definitely a possibility. And this does look like a bear flag here. And Nvidia earnings will be a catalyst one way or the other. And just because we still need to fill this gap does not mean we need to fill it tomorrow or even this week. So that is SPX, then QQQ. The implied move over here tomorrow is between 497 and 510, and that is from options. The 30-day average is exactly the same. It's actually a few pennies wider, but 497 to 510, and then 495 to 512 on Thursday's contract. And to the upside, we have this same resistance here. So we have this up gap from after election. So this was the one right after election, but then we ran that next day and then gapped up. So second gap of election week, and then we gapped down after CPI and PPI. So we've got election gap, inflation gap, and those two are right here, and that is our first level of resistance. If we get above that, 510 is the top of the implied move, and 512 on Thursday's contract. And then to the downside, we do have this 30-minute 200 moving average and 35 EMA. We did have a bearish close. I know it's very close, and either way can go tomorrow, but we did have a bearish close here, and these two levels definitely the first place to look tomorrow. First thing, does this hold as support? And if not, then look down the 1 hour 200 moving average. We did see support there today. We dropped down to the 1 hour at open and then popped up. Last week, the 1 hour 200 moving average did not hold. It was these gaps that brought us back up. We bounced right on this bull gap. We closed out this part of the bull gap. We closed out the bear gap, part of the bear gap, but where all three overlapped is where we bounced. So that is just outside of the implied move for the next 2 days, and that's at 494. So 497 for tomorrow, 495 on Thursday's contract, and then 494 is that next support underneath it. So crazy looking trading range for QQQ, and Nvidia earnings definitely have a high stake in QQQ, so it's going to be very important. And then IWM. Implied move for small caps tomorrow, 228 to 233, and that is from options. The 30-day average volatility is a bit wider, 225 to 235, and 227 to 234 on Thursday's contract. So IWM looking like a little bit of a smaller move than SPY and QQQ. Not expecting quite as much volatility, even though RVX did close up 5.15%. So we will see. We could use the entire 30-day average volatility and see some of these outer strikes. But to the upside, the first level to look for is just going to be the top of the implied move at 233. So if this holds right here, the 35 EMA, which we closed above, and this 30-minute 200 moving average, which we closed above, and if that holds tomorrow, then 233 is the top of the implied move, and 234 on Thursday's contract. And then if this breaks, then look down to 228, and that is right at that 1 hour 200 moving average, which we did see support today. 227 is the implied move on Thursday's contract. And then we have been chipping into this election gap. And if this turns out to be a bear flag, and it doesn't really look like a very clean bear flag, but it could be, that 1 hour 200 moving average could be the bottom of the channel, and then right there. And then the target from that would probably be to close out this election gap. So we are at a make it or break it level. If this 35 EMA bounces here, and it might, then we're going to see higher. But if it breaks down underneath, that is a sell signal. All right, and DIA. DIA, the implied move for tomorrow is between 427 and 438, and that is from options. And that is on the day, and then the implied move for the entire week from the beginning of the week, 428 to 441. We're still well within that trading range. And to the upside, 35 EMA right here. You can see that's where we saw resistance today, and that pushed us back down before we were even able to close this gap right here. So we've got a little bear gap right here and the 35 EMA, and if we do get above that, then 438 is possible. Right here we have a down gap that I didn't put in, so let's put that in there right now from here to here. So at the very top of the implied move, we do have a bear gap. From what I've seen of the price action today, if we do get to the top up here, I would expect selling there, a little bit of selling pressure. So to the downside then, we have the 30-minute 200 moving average. In tomorrow's trading range, we're likely going to break out one way or the other, either above the 35 EMA or underneath the 30-minute 200 moving average. And the MA that we have seen support on is this 1 hour 200 moving average. So if we do drop down, watch to see if that 1 hour catches us. And 427 is the bottom of the implied move. For tomorrow, 428 is actually right there above us, and that level would likely give us a put wall in options. So 428 is a level, and that takes us into this bear gap right here within the election gap. And I didn't actually close out this part of the gap, but I will. And we have this down gap right here from a little bit before the election, and then this gap right here, which today we finally chipped into a little bit after Monday's flat trading above that. So right underneath that is that bear gap, and that did bring us back up with the 1 hour 200 moving average. And lastly, as promised, Nvidia. The expected move for Nvidia earnings tomorrow is between 134 and 160. So market is expecting a 8.5% move tomorrow. So $12.57 is the implied move for Nvidia earnings. And this is definitely not a complete analysis here, but the 1 hour 200 moving average, the last 3 times we encountered it, did act as a support. So that is currently at 140. And then the bottom of the implied move for earnings, 134 to 160. So there you have it, guys. Everything you need for tomorrow to make it a really great day. Let me know what you think is going to happen with Nvidia earnings. And have fun, trade safe, make sure you take profits when you're up, and I will see you guys tomorrow night.